No, a lot of vet rest days for Matthew lately. Some are calling him Odell Berry Jr. These days.
Raheem Mostert
doesn't practice on Wednesdays anymore.
Yeah. Raheem Mostert. I did notice in that short clip there, he said you guys should refer to him as champion. I wasn't there, so he didn't say anything about me.
You don't have to.
So I could just still refer to him as like, hey, or dude, or hey, what's your name again? Like, so I
Pops?
don't have to. Yeah, Pops.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Connor Rogers alongside Jay Croucher and the return of the champ. Welcome back, Matthew Berry, to the studio.
Odell.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm fine with Odell. I'm fine with Raheem Mostert. You know, DeAndre Hopkins, whatever.
Yes.
One of those veteran rest days. LeBron, you bet.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm here with my buddy, my pal, my
sucks.
friend, my amigo.
Don't like that.
We'll be sleeping together later. I'll be making sweet love to this thing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely
Stop
beautiful.
touching him like that.
No, I'm going. No, are you kidding me? This is my pal. This is my buddy.
That's a crime in
this
Missouri.
This is now a co-host of the show. By the way, I want to address what Lawrence Jackson said there. At Lord does lose. You know what? Listen, you're right, Lawrence. I did not specifically address you. You don't have to call me champ. What you have to do is call everyone in the league champ.
Yes.
Because Lawrence had a tough year.
Yeah.
A lot of injuries, not all his fault. But let's make no mistake. Like, no team in the league of assholes finished lower than Lawrence Jackson. That's
right.
Yes.
He had a tough year at the office.
Now, to be fair, he had a really bad draft as well.
Yes.
So it was downhill
So you set
from
up
the
to fail.
start. Yes.
Yeah.
Set up to fail and then failed.
Well, he swung for the fences. It was a super flex league. His first pick was Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
He had the number 1 overall pick. His first pick was Lamar, who had an MVP season, but fantasy-wise, he was very up and down.
Yeah.
Very inconsistent fantasy-wise. And then his second pick on the come-around was Anthony Richardson,
Yeah.
which was looking good for a couple of weeks there. So when you basically get half your first-round pick and none of your second-round pick, it gets tough. And then there were some poor decisions in there, Lawrence. There were some poor decisions. So you don't have to just call me champ. Literally everyone in the league you have to refer to as champ.
Yeah. Lamar finished, well, he is QB3 on the season,
Yes.
but a lot of that production came when he may have contributed to guys not making the playoffs in the first spot.
It just felt like he would have these big games, and then he would have these games where, like, I remember the Arizona game.
Yeah.
This is like I had him in a guillotine league, and this was the week I got cut because I had him against Arizona, and he had like 1 touchdown because they killed him.
Yeah.
Because Gus Edwards had a couple of
That was the problem.
touchdowns, and like there was a defensive touchdown, I think. And it just the point is that Lamar has played very good football throughout this entire year, but fantasy-wise, the production has been in these big spike games and not consistent. You know what I mean? Like whereas somebody like Brock Purdy is like 18, 20 points every single week, except when he played Baltimore. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, there was a 5-week stretch, I think, from week 5 to about week 10 where Lamar cleared 15 points once.
Yeah.
Because they were just like killing Seattle 38-3 or whatever and just never had to throw. So it was a weird season, but certainly he came good. And if you were able to get to the playoffs with Lamar Jackson, he probably won you some championships.
yeah, including me, you know, and one of my other leagues, not this league, though. This league I use Patrick Mahomes and Sam Howell, if you will, and Joe Flacco. And I used Joe Flacco for much of the championship run.
King Flacco.
There as well. Yes, King Flacco, our one true king. Anyway, it's a buddy. It's a pal.
Okay.
It's an amigo.
Well,
Baby.
Because of that,
Baby.
we've decided that you drink free, or a variant of you
Yeah,
drinks
fair
free.
enough.
Yes.
Because today on the happy hour board, Pops
Pops.
drinks for free.
You know, it's interesting. I came in and I saw the sign, and I thought it was referring to Pops, who works here. We have
Yes.
somebody at NBC who everyone lovingly calls Pops, who he's in charge of basically all the studios. This set, believe it or not, we're not actually in a bar. We're in a set that looks like a bar. It looks like an Applebee's, and that is all due to the great work of Pops and his team.
Yes.
They are amazing, and so everything you see on NBC comes through Pops' purview. He's a legend here at NBC Sports, and that's where I thought he should drink free.
He always
by the
drinks
way.
free, though.
He
He
always
built
drinks
the
free.
bar.
He built the bar.
So when you build the bar,
100%.
it's
we love
known.
Pops here. So anyway, it's just that's what I thought. But no, it was just an old man reference by Lawrence. It's
Yes.
fine. I will be a benevolent ruler.
Yes.
Do not worry about
Okay.
this.
All right.
I have
Rule with
decided
grace
I will
and
be
fairness.
a benevolent ruler.
Very happy
I will
about
rule
that.
with a strong but just fist.
Yes.
Yes.
Not iron,
No.
but a leather
just.
fist.
Yes, a leather,
Yeah.
a soft leather fist.
Yes.
I'm old.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, it's Week 18's love-hate, but before we get there, let's jump into the Rotoworld Player news because we have a lot of injuries we're tracking. For all of your player news, go to NBCSports.com. Tua and Zach Moss practiced in full on Wednesday. That's a good sign. Obviously, Tua with the shoulder, it's more soreness right now. Trevor Lawrence was limited, as well as his wide receiver Christian Kirk, who could be officially activated. Jaden Reed with the chest injury, Sam Laporta with an ankle. They were both limited as well. A lot of DMPs after that. Devontae Smith with the ankle, T. Higgins with a hamstring, Jaylen Waddle with the ankle, still not practicing. Noah Brown with a back injury, also not practicing, and it does not stop there. Raheem Mostert with that knee, he's still not practicing. And that's a massive game. That's a game where everything's on the line, so watch those down to the wire. Alvin Kamara with the ankle did not practice. Kenneth Walker with the shoulder. Isiah Pacheco with a quad and shoulder did not practice. Rashee Rice, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, Amari Cooper, Baker Mayfield, and Keenan Allen all did not practice Wednesday. So you want to track these right down to the wire here, guys.
Some of them we can already tell you. Like, Amari Cooper ain't
play
playing.
some of them.
Yeah, Amari Cooper ain't playing. Like, the Browns are resting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of those guys. I don't think Jaylen Waddle plays, right? You know, so some of those you sort of already know. Pacheco, Rashee Rice, the Chiefs are going to rest, and we're gonna get into sort of the motivation, not only through love-hate, as you'll see today, but tomorrow will be a show dedicated to sort of who's playing, who isn't, as well. So some of them you already sort of know. Some of them make you nervous. Trevor Lawrence, like, even if he goes on the road at Tennessee, like, this might be, I don't think it is, but this might be Mike Vrabel's last.
There's a lot of weird stuff coming out.
It's a lot of weird stuff in Tennessee. I think they're nuts, by the way. If I was running Tennessee, like, I think Mike Vrabel's a great coach.
Yeah.
I think he has done a lot with not a lot to work with over the many years. They always play tough for him. I will say this, if Vrabel were suddenly to become available, come on over to the Commanders, Mike Vrabel. I would take you in a heartbeat. I suspect that New England might make a strong run at Vrabel as well.
2 years ago, Vrabel was coach of the year. He got a 1 seed with Ryan Tannehill as his quarterbap, with Derrick Henry missing half the year, with the most injured team in the league.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on there, but the point is that there's a non-zero chance that this game in Tennessee is Vrabel's last as the head coach of the Titans. And, you know, listen, they're not going to make the playoffs, but they wouldn't mind ruining the playoff chances of the Jacksonville Jaguars, their rival, their division rival. And so with Trevor Lawrence at less than 100%, this on the road to Tennessee, which is always a tough place to play, that one makes me nervous. Like, I had a buddy text me, Tua or Trevor Lawrence, and I think the answer's got to be Tua.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
You know, like, again, I know it's a tough game against the Bills, but, yeah, Trevor I'm nervous about that one.
Yeah. Baker Mayfield is the other one, the big quarterback under an injury risk, because this is win the division, lose, and they're done for the season. And he's going into Carolina, the team that released him last year. So I think he will do everything possible to play. X-rays were negative on his ribs. So he is practicing today as a limited participant, but if you watch the videos of his practice and the beat reporting, like, he's not throwing the ball more than 15 yards. So I don't know. I would guess that he is going to play and probably be pretty limited.
And by the way, not for nothing, over the last month, the Carolina Panthers are the second best pass defense in the NFL. They've played kind of inspired football here. Buccaneers are only 4.5-point favorites. And I think that if you said, like, what do you think the line is? Oh, the Panthers are awful. The Bucs are, you know, a legitimate playoff team. Like, it's got to be maybe a touchdown, but it's 4.5.
Yeah. This kind of reminds me a couple of years ago when Carson Wentz went into Jacksonville as a 17-point favorite, just needed to win to get into the playoffs, and they got completely blown out by rookie number 1 pick Trevor Lawrence, just like rookie number 1 pick Bryce Young might be able to do the Bucs. So I'd be a little bit worried about Baker, because we've seen Baker play through injuries in the past, and it has not been pretty. Right. But he is a gamer, he's tough, and I think he's just going to play, but I wouldn't expect that. I mean, maybe he will. Maybe he'll be throwing 60-yard bombs to Mike Evans, but I'd be a little bit concerned.
It feels like this is a big Rachaad White game. Just a bunch of dump-offs, try to run. You can run on Carolina, games in Carolina, so on the road, try to take them out of it as well. And they're going to need the defense to step up. They're going to need the defense. It is worth noting, as you see it there on your screen, Rotoworld football headline there, Baker is, in fact, practicing today. So.
With that, let's jump into love-hate, and we kick it off with the running backs. Kenneth Walker against Arizona. Obviously, this is a great matchup, Matthew, for Kenneth Walker in this game.
Yeah, it's the Cardinals. No team in the NFL has allowed more rushing yards than the Arizona Cardinals. They also give the second most fantasy points to running backs. And running backs that get at least 15 touches against the Cards are averaging 22.8 fantasy points per game. Kenneth Walker has reestablished himself as the lead dog in that Seahawks backfield. They're using Charbonnet as more of this kind of a change of pace guy. So expect a heavy workload for Ken Walker this weekend. He's my number 5 running back.
Yeah, I will never understand how the Eagles contrived to lose that game against the Cardinals from 21-6 up at home at halftime in a game they needed to win the NFC East. And no Eagles running back really got going against the Cardinals, but I have to think that that is the outlier, and you have to look at the full season sample where they've been very bad against the run.
And within the same game, James Conner makes the love list. So 2 top 5 running backs here, Matthew, as Conner has Seattle's defense, which has also struggled this month.
They're allowing the 5th most fantasy points to running backs over the last 4 weeks. And in fact, during that stretch, running backs that faced the Seahawks averaging over 5.2 yards per carry. Like, you can run on Seattle, which is, again, to your point, Jay, I don't understand why Philadelphia didn't just, run DeAndre Swift 30 times in that game. It was a weird one as well. But James Conner, who's been really productive down this stretch, he's helped a lot of fantasy managers, 2 titles. And so if you're playing this week, we expect another big workload and a successful one from James Conner, who's running back 3 for me this week.
Yep, number 31 rushing defense in the NFL in Seattle.
A couple others receiving votes. Jaylen Warren against the Ravens. Now, the Ravens obviously resting a ton of people in this game. The Steelers are favored in that game. And then Devin Singletary there, Matthew, in a massive game for the Colts and the Texans.
Yeah, for sure. So since week 15, 75% of the Houston Texans running back touches have gone to Motor Singletary. Teams that face the Colts this year averaging the 2nd most running back carries per game. They're going to want to establish the run, use all the cliches you want. Over the last 4 weeks, Colts allow the 4th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. So Devin Singletary, I think, is a high-end flex. And then you see Jaylen Warren coming in at running back 19 for me as well. To your point, Ravens have nothing to play for. They're resting a lot of their starters. They've already announced that as well. And over the last month, the Ravens allow 5.3 yards per carry to opposing running backs. 4 straight games with at least 4 receptions for Jaylen Warren. Mason Rudolph not scared to dump it off to Jaylen Warren. It's weird as this is to say, it feels like the Steelers' passing offense has found some stability with Mason Rudolph. I don't know that it's success, but it at least looks like a competent passing offense under Mason Rudolph.
It does feel like the rug is going to get pulled underneath Pittsburgh on Saturday, doesn't it? I don't really buy the Mason Rudolph thing, but he has been, to his credit, he's been very solid in his starts. And the one thing about the Ravens is that they have an all-world defense, but it is built on an all-world pass defense. You cannot throw on the Ravens. You can run on them. They're like an average rushing defense, just no one gets a chance to run because they're always trailing against Baltimore. So I agree with that. And also, Indianapolis' run defense, the team just can't tackle at the moment. And Grover Stewart back the past few weeks has helped a little bit, but still, I mean, they got completely shredded by Atlanta in particular a couple of weeks ago.
I actually like the Ravens backups getting points in that game.
I
really
do.
I think they built a scheme that there'll be a drop-off, but they built a scheme that they'll play them tough down the wire.
There's a reason. I mean, again, Mason Rudolph has been competent.
Yes.
He's looked better just because what we're used to is Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky who have looked brutal this year, right? But he's not a good quarterback.
No. And here's the thing, too, and we've talked about this the past couple of days. Yes, the Ravens are going to be resting guys. You can't rest the whole team. There's only so many spots on the roster. You have so many inactives, and guys who are going to be resting are probably going to be Odell Beckham, and Lamar Jackson's not going to play. You can't just get rid of Marlon Humphrey, Jadeveon Clowney, Roquan Smith, all of these
Kyle
guys.
Hamilton, exactly.
These guys have to play, and if they're going to play, they're not just going to completely treat it like a preseason game, given that the Steelers need this one.
And starters are backups. The Ravens would love to keep the Steelers out of the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
Right, they hate them.
Right.
Those two teams hate each other. Yep. So either way, we like Jaylen Warren this week.
We move over to the hate list with Javonte Williams. Jay, the problem with Javonte right now, his snap count just continues to go downward.
Continues to go downward, going up against a really tough Raiders defense that I know Jonathan Taylor had a good game against them, but it wasn't super efficient. He just got a ton of volume and was able to get in the end zone. So this Raiders defense has been the best in the NFL in the second half of the season, which is crazy to say, but that's the level they're playing at. So they're just a very difficult team to run on.
3 straight games where he's played, to your point, under 50% of the snaps. He's averaging single-digit fantasy points in that time frame. And the Raiders, under Antonio Pierce, have played really good defense. Just to give you a stat that backs up exactly what you're saying here, Jay, they allow the 6th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs over the last month. I mean, the Raiders are playing really good defense. So you've got Javonte Williams on an offense where he's not getting a ton of touches in a tough matchup. It's hard to think about him in anywhere near your lineup. He's running back 31 for me this week.
Yep. And this guy, he's starting to finally get his due. He's not going to win Defensive Player of the Year, but Max Crosby should be top
Correct.
3 on ballots. He is. And the thing that makes him special, I think we know he's a great pass rusher. He gets his sacks, but against the run, he's an absolute monster. When you look at his run stops, his tackles for loss, so he's a very tough guy to go up against every week.
Connor, I know you talk to a lot of general managers as part of your scouting process. Just curious, what are your feelings? Does Antonio Pierce keep this job? Have you gotten a sense from around the league? As you talk to a lot of your sources?
It's trending the right way for him. It really is. There's a belief there that he has a legitimate shot. And usually it's never hire the interim coach. I think he's going into this process because they'll interview people with a leg up on everyone they're going to interview. I think the biggest question for Pierce is, do they get the GM candidate they want with him there? Because a lot of times you hire pairings,
right? And
nobody knows. Truly, this is something people just don't know because this has been such a rapid ascension for Pierce. Would a GM candidate that they view with a very positive light say, "Oh no, I'd want him to be my head coach"? And I'm not leading one way or the other. There might be a guy that says, "I'm blown away by what he's done," but ownership loves Antonio Pierce.
Rightfully so. And I'll say this: if Pierce does not get this job, I wouldn't be shocked if he got a head coaching job somewhere else. It's been such an impressive turnaround for the Raiders, and they've clearly played so hard for him, and the players are campaigning for him.
Yep.
Like, let me put it this way, I don't know if he'll necessarily get a head coaching job. He'll be interviewed. He'll absolutely get some looks.
Yep.
So, yes.
It's been one of the most underrated stories of the season, the way this Raiders defense has turned into, it's been the best defense in the NFL the second half of the season. This was a group that people thought coming into the year would definitely be a bottom 10 unit in football, and they've been an absolute monster. And it's not like they're doing it just against bad teams. Like Patrick Mahomes could do nothing against them in Arrowhead a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I think why he has the leg up is ownership sees the style that he has them playing and thinks that's the way they can get back in this division is they play excellent defense, both phases, stopping the run and stopping the pass, and they run the ball. And when you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Sean Payton's going to get his guy, probably in this draft, one of the top 4 guys or someone along that lines, they're pass-happy teams. So you kind of have to, it's a zigzag, metaphor in a sense, where they have to do something different to stay alive in that division. He's the guy that could do that.
Yep.
So great for future Josh Jacobs if he's back there as well.
Justin Fields in Vegas.
It's interesting.
For him?
That if the problem is they might win too many games where they don't get Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, forget Caleb Williams and Drake May. That's a really interesting one.
He's got to go somewhere if he's not going to be in Chicago.
No, I would put them as one of the top 3 favorite teams to get Justin Fields.
Are those obviously Williams and May are 1, 2, depending on who you talk to, but are Daniels and Penix widely considered 3, 4?
Yeah, and they're going in the top 10, I think. I think we've landed. I think we've landed with 4 quarterbacks in the top 10. And then in the first round, you could still have a J.J. McCarthy, a Bo Nix. Like, this is a heavy, heavy quarterback year.
I'm out on McCarthy.
Yeah, that's a different tier. Different tier. They tried to hide him.
He's made some plays, but he gets some
Jim
moments of
Harbaugh
madness.
says he's the greatest quarterback in Michigan history.
Yeah, I like Brady. Yeah, I like Tom
Depending where
Brady.
Jim goes,
would go, right?
he might be able to bring him with him.
Absolutely true.
Another
I think Jim Harbaugh is an NFL head coach
It's
2
happening.
weeks from now.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
With Justin Herbert, I would suspect.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's the right fit. They just have to be able to pay him, and that ownership typically doesn't pay very heavily paid coaches. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see.
All right, our next running back on the hate list, Ty Chandler. It feels like some of the flame has gone out here, Barry, with Ty Chandler, and he goes into a Detroit matchup that's a very pass funnel kind of defense, not a run funnel.
Tough match. Listen, Ty Chandler against the Packers last week, I think, was certainly disappointing. Over the last 2 weeks, for whatever reason, they're using a lot more Madison than, candidly, I think they should. But just 11 touches over the last 2 weeks. He's averaging under 11 touches, Ty Chandler is, in his last 2 games. You mentioned Detroit, right? No team in the NFL has allowed fewer rushing yards per game than the Detroit Lions as well. No running back has rushed for more than 67 yards, I should say, against the Lions. You think about Week 16, when Ty Chandler had become a thing, he faced these same Lions, had 17 rushing yards. So Chandler, who they're using Madison more in the passing attack, I don't understand that, but they are. And so in a game in which the Lions, the only thing here, the only caveat here is that we don't know how much the Lions are going to play their starters. The Lions are pretty much locked into their spot. So what's the motivation here? Now, they haven't been in the playoffs in a long time. Dan Campbell's rough, tough, we're going to eat their kneecaps and, bite their children and, all the stuff that he did, drink their blood and, and wear their skin and, he's a football guy. He's shout out to Pardon My Take. He's a football guy. And I just, so I feel like I lean toward the Lions playing more of their guys than not, and certainly wanting to play against a division rival. But that's the only saving grace, is that it might be some backups here. But I'm nervous about Chandler. He's just inside my top 30 this week.
Snaps going progressively down, and I think so much of the Ty Chandler hype was built out of, one, how bad Alexander Mattison had looked, and then two, just that he was so dominant against the Bengals, who without DJ Reader might have the single worst run defense in the NFL. So now going up against a team where, like, the Dallas game was perfectly instructive. Dak did whatever he wanted through the air against Detroit, and Tony Pollard couldn't do anything on the ground. So this is as you mentioned, Connor, a pass funnel defense. And Nick Mullins, for all his sins, he can throw it down the field. Like, he will make the throws. It's just every seventh throw is madness.
He believes he can.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, but yes, he can throw down the field, except apparently not to Justin Jefferson.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to it's a Thursday show. We've got a little bit of time. So my last Sunday night, my Football Night in America, my 3-play, my DraftKings 3-play, my parlay, I had Jaden Reed over on the receptions. I had Tucker Kraft over on the receiving yards. And then my easy leg was Justin Jefferson on alt line at 60 receiving yards.
Yeah.
He had at least 84 receiving yards in every healthy game this year. It's Justin Jefferson against the Packers with no Jair Alexander. 60 yards. Like, that's the layup leg.
Yeah.
Like the ones that I'm sort of sweating a little bit. Kraft and Reed hit theirs easily. Justin Jefferson finishes with 59 receiving yards.
It's a brutal bad beat.
That's a tough one.
59.
Yeah.
59, and you're like, oh, that's a bad beat. Oh, sure, it's a bad beat. But at least you weren't in front of 17 million people giving that bet out.
Yeah. Just on that game, that was a really interesting live betting game, because it became clear after like 3 drives that Jaron Hall was just deer in the headlights.
Yes.
I know he's a rookie, and hopefully he will develop and get better, but
That
it
was a lot
clear
worse than we all thought.
And the fact as well that, like, that was effectively a do or die game for Minnesota, and Jaron Hall's passing yards prop just stays up the whole time. It doesn't get priced in the percentage chance that he could get benched. And then all of a sudden his passing prop just goes from 200 to whatever he ended up at, 50 or whatever.
Right.
And so when there is the opportunity for a player to get benched, you can bet the live under on their passing yards. So it's just one thing for people to look out for next time that's in play.
Yeah.
One last note on our running backs here. Kyron Williams will not play in Week 18 against the 49ers. A very important note, as a lot of guys are rested. As Matthew said, we'll get into more of those tomorrow. How about pass catchers here, which is led by A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown.
Mason Rudolph, by the way, is one of those guys that's in danger of that.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's a do-or-die game.
It's a do-or-die game
Right.
for them.
Yep. If he throws a couple picks, he's in big trouble. Yep.
A.J. Brown against the Giants. Matthew, top 5 wide receiver for you this week?
No question about it. Devontae Smith, we talked about it earlier in the show. He's dealing with that ankle sprain. Who knows how healthy he'll be, if he can go or not. And this year, when he sees at least 8 targets, A.J. Brown's averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. Giants top 5 in terms of most fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers. So A.J. Brown should get a decent amount of looks against. This is a game that Philadelphia needs to win to, maintain a chance at winning the NFC East. So they're going to play their starters, and A.J. Brown should have a big game. He's my number 5 wide receiver this week against the G-Men.
Yeah. Nick Sirianni talked about resting guys a little bit. I don't understand that at all. I know that it's unlikely that Dallas loses to the Commanders, but it's one game, and it's in Washington, and Sam Howell he's shown that he went toe-to-toe with Philadelphia twice.
By the way, this exact scenario happened last year, and the Commanders beat the Cowboys in the last week of the season with Sam Howell under center.
Yeah.
Now, the Cowboys, they had different motivations last year than they do this year, but the Cowboys still want to beat Cowboys always want to beat the Commanders. Those two teams hate each other, and so, the Cowboys are trying.
Yep.
Sam Howell played really well, and that's honestly what got him the job last year. So, listen, I am rooting for the Cowboys in this game.
Yeah.
We got the
Go
number 2
boys.
pick, Commanders. Understand the assignment. You understand?
Hold.
Do you understand? We are in Caleb Williams, Drake May territory.
Yeah.
You know what? Don't screw this up.
So you're all in for taking whoever is left between those two. Out on Howell.
I am. I'm not out on Howell.
Relative to those two guys.
That's what it is.
You kind of have
That's
to.
what it is. I think Howell's a nice player.
Yeah.
I think Howell is a serviceable NFL starter or a really good backup. But from everything I'm being told, and when I say everything I'm being told, it's literally just talking to Connor, who's my draft expert. He's my go-to guy. These two guys, Drake May and Caleb Williams, are like franchise-making quarterbacks. This is Joe Burrow territory.
Right,
this is Trevor Lawrence. This is
it's a special class that you have to take one of those guys. And the class is so good that Penix and Jaden Daniels, who are phenomenal, like don't even get put in the combo with them. And they're still top 10 picks at quarterback.
Yeah, so honestly, like, I think compared with those guys, I think you got to take one of those guys.
Yeah.
Like, and I also think, by the way, that then maybe you trade Howell. By the way,
Yeah,
or like or trade down. Like, I wouldn't mind trading. Like, I think I want May or Williams, whoever's left. But I wouldn't mind also, like, again, I think Daniels or Penix would be great if you trade down to like 5 or 6 and you get a Hall. That's interesting as well. Depends on who the coach is going to be. I don't expect Ron Rivera to be back with the team, and I think they'll clean house. I think there'll be a new general manager, a new president, the whole thing. But I do think one of those two guys is interesting, and I just think that, real quickly for 1 second, just think about draft philosophy. I don't think you can have too many of any position, and quarterback is the most valuable position in all of professional sports. I remember being so angry when Washington traded all those picks to move up to draft RG3. I was like, woohoo, we got RG3. This guy's going to be awesome. And then they used a 4th-round pick on Kirk Cousins. And I was just like, what are they doing? Yeah. We have so many needs. Why are we going to use a 4th-round pick on Kirk Cousins? And that ended up being a brilliant move by Mike Shanahan.
Yeah, the Shanahans.
By the Shanahans, who were running the team at the time, because they were like, you can never. They had a 2nd or 3rd round grade on Cousins, and he was just sitting there in the 4th, and they're like, screw it, we're going to take him. And obviously, that ended up helping the franchise in a big way because RG3 was never the same after his injury, after his rookie year. He was an offensive rookie year, and he was awesome. And there's a lot that goes into why RG3 didn't work out as a pro. But anyway, I don't. If the Commanders have Caleb Williams or Drake May and Sam Howell, I think that's a pretty good position to be in. And, who knows? Maybe they bring back Jacoby. Maybe they trade Howell and keep Brissett as a backup to one of those guys.
Yeah, give Howell a chance to go play somewhere. But
be a starter somewhere.
Have a veteran. Yeah, everything's on the table in that scenario.
And Howell is an NFL starter to me. But I don't know that he's in. Those guys, I think, that's potential. From everything, it just feels like those guys are potentially franchise changing.
Yep, no, I agree.
One thing I'm consistently told going into this offseason is that with the amount of backup quarterbacks that played in pivotal games this year, that market is going to exponentially jump. It's the guys that are free agents are going to get paid more than they usually would. The guys that are trade candidates will bring back more than they usually would. Like the number 2 quarterback across the league will be viewed much differently than it typically was. And it has to be. I mean, we're talking about Mason Rudolph starting a do-or-die game.
Yep.
No, I mean, a million of the, I mean, like, you could just go through this. We did this on Fantasy Football pregame the other day here, right? I mean, but, like, whether it's, if the Falcons had somebody competent besides Ritter or Heineke,
Jake Browning?
Yeah, what's the bar, right?
Yeah, right, but my point is like Jake Browning kept the Bengals' hopes alive somewhat. If think about, the Browns might make the Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. Yeah. Right? What's the Jet season turnout if they had Jacoby Brissett, or they'd had Joe Flacco or Mike White or one of these guys that could competently run an offense?
Yep.
That's what it comes down to.
I mean, so 1,000%. I mean, it's so Minnesota. I mean, like, it was fun with Josh Dobbs for a while, but like if Minnesota had somebody that they, could count.
I will always think if they just stuck with Josh Dobbs.
They should have stuck with Josh Dobbs. I'm a Josh Dobbs fan. I agree with you. I think they screwed that up.
Give him a full game, one full game with Justin Jefferson. Could he have had that?
Right.
No.
It's a little weird.
It's like we go with Mullins and Jaron Hall. Very strange.
All right, our other wide receiver here on the love list, Mike Evans, Jay. He's got the Panthers, but we did talk about the variance with Baker Mayfield's injury right now.
That's a little bit of a concern. You would suspect that if Baker can go, that hopefully he's in a good enough position to be able to feed Evans. Evans was a monster last time he played Carolina. He went 7 for 162 and a touchdown. Mike Evans is about to have the quietest 1,300-yard, 13-14 touchdown season in NFL history. Just no one pays attention to the Bucs. Antoine Winfield Jr. missed the Pro Bowl last night. Buda Baker gets in over it. It's just incomprehensible.
Insane.
Yeah, it's like voting Sam Howell MVP over Lamar Jackson. Like, what? How did the Antoine Winfield not get in? So no, I think Evans, if Baker can go and is at a reasonable health level, you'd expect that Evans will be a monster.
Multiple end zone targets to the last 3 weeks. Like, again, we always sort of look, when you make start-sit decisions, one of the things you always say is, like, who's most likely to score a touchdown? And is there a wide receiver in the NFL these days more likely to score a touchdown than Mike Evans? I don't think there is. Even in a game in which he might be limited, he'll still get a lot of targets. Mike Evans, my wide receiver 9.
Some others receiving votes here, Matthew. DJ Moore against the Packers. Calvin Ridley against the Titans. Demarcus Robinson, who's been one of the hottest receivers in football these last 5 games against the Niners. And then Juwan Johnson, who literally put you on his back and carried you to an NBC Fantasy Happy Hour championship.
Juwan Johnson is my guy. Take that, stupid Dev. Every time Juwan Johnson, Super Dev sees Juwan Johnson on the screen, you should remember about how he tried to screw me out of a tight end, and he lost. But it's a really good matchup for him as the Falcons rank bottom 6 in both catches and yards allowed to tight ends this season. Juwan Johnson scored in 3 straight. He's the second best tight end in fantasy over the last 3 weeks as well. You mentioned Demarcus Robinson. Look, Cooper Kupp's not going to play. I think Puka Nacua plays just to get him the record, right? Which is like 29 yards and a couple of receptions.
Yeah.
So I think you see a lot of Demarcus Robinson, who has 5 straight games with at least 13 fantasy points, 29% target share last week for Demarcus Robinson. Calvin Ridley, I'm a little bit nervous, again, about Trevor Lawrence, but it's worth noting the Titans have allowed the 3rd most receptions to wide receivers this season. When they played last, Ridley had 31 points against the Titans back in Week 11. And finally, DJ Moore, this year with Justin Fields under center, 29% target share. Super talented. You're starting DJ Moore. He's my wide receiver 10. Great matchup as well.
You brought up the Rams situation, Matthew. Cooper Kupp not playing. Jay, Puka Nacua chasing a 63-year-old record, the rookie receiving record. How do you set that market? It has to be like, what, 30s? Because he's going to come out as soon as he gets it, but he is a guy that has big or at least intermediate catches consistently, like 37.5.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably have to set it high 30s just because it's unlikely he goes and he just finishes his reception at exactly 29 yards or whatever. It's an interesting betting thing, and books will probably adjust to this, and it's always relative to price, but stuff like betting on Puka Nacua to get a reception on the Rams' first drive, like that should be as short as that market has ever been in history, because that's the only reason he's in the game is to get this record. So I think the Puka, I wouldn't be, if you're still playing in fantasy, I wouldn't want to start Puka Nacua because he's just going to come out after he gets that record, and they've signaled their intent. Also, the Rams are maybe the most conservative team in the NFL with resting players. Like, they don't play their guys in the preseason, and they're showing their hand not playing Stafford and Kupp and these guys. So.
Yeah, and honestly, like I saw a clip from McVay's press conference. Guy on Twitter named the Coach Speak Index does a great job. His name's Greg. And anyways, but he tracks all the coaches, like who's honest and who's not.
It's really good.
He's really good. Give him a follow. But what I would say is that, he's like, McVay has about a 70%, this is according to Coach Speak Index, who tracks this stuff. He's got about a 70% track record of like what he says on the podium. It turns out to be true. And he was basically saying like, we want to get him the record, but we want to be smart, is in essence, which is basically saying like, look, he's going to get his 30 yards and he's coming out. Right? 30 yards, and how many receptions does he need?
That I don't know.
4 receptions.
4 receptions.
4? Okay.
By the way,
so he needs 29 yards and 4 receptions.
Yes. And so I think,
So he's gonna go 5 for 30, and then he's coming out.
Yeah. The Jags line against the Titans just dropped from basically 6 to 3.5. So it looks like Trevor Lawrence might be in some serious doubt there.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's a
big
swing.
drop.
Yeah.
Yes.
CJ Beathard's worth 3.5 points, sounds like.
Yeah, 2.5.
2.5, sorry. Yeah. I don't always do math in my head.
Well, let's get into the quarterbacks then.
Just remember, I've got this.
Love A quarterbacks. Kicked off with Dak Prescott, of course, here. He's got your Commanders, Barry. Do I need to say any more?
No, you had me at Commanders. No team in the NFL has allowed more passing touchdowns this year than my Washington Commanders. Here's the only quarterbacks to not score at least 17 fantasy points against the Commanders this season. Josh Dobbs, Mac Jones, Trevor Siemian. Josh Dobbs with the Cardinals, by the way. Josh Dobbs, Mac Jones, Trevor Siemian, and Desmond Ridder. Dak went 331 and 4 touchdowns against the Commanders in Week 12, and they're a lot worse since then. They've traded away their starters. Rivera's calling the plays. Supposedly, this is a disaster waiting to happen. The Cowboys need this game to win the NFC East. They win this game, they win the NFC East. That's a point of pride for them. Also means they'll host playoff games. I believe they become the number 2 seed, which is nice. So they wouldn't have to go on the road until San Francisco in the championship game.
Yeah, they're a powerhouse at home.
And they're so good at home. They want home field for as long as they can get it. Dak is my number 1 quarterback this week.
Jay, we look at Geno Smith as the next quarterback here, QB6 for Matthew. We talked about how bad Arizona's run defense has been, but it doesn't get any better when you talk about the pass defense.
No, and Geno has had a strange season. It feels like it's been a letdown coming off the being comeback player of the year last season, reviving his career. I think he's still been really good at an NFL level. He's been really solid, particularly in the game against Dallas. That was the best game he's ever played, I think. And then Titans, he led them down the field. Obviously takes a tough loss last week against the Steelers, but now Cardinals, really favorable matchup. I mean, the Cardinals, they showed their hand with what they think of their own defense when they tried an onside kick because they knew that they weren't going to stop Philly, so let's just get the ball back and score ourselves like it's a Pac-12 game or something. But I think that Geno, he should be able to do whatever he wants. In a game that Seattle, they need to win. They can still make the playoffs, so they'll be going all out for this one.
Over the last month, only one team in the NFL allows more fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks than the Arizona Cardinals. So Geno Smith is my QB6 this week, no question.
Two others receiving votes. C.J. Stroud against the Colts. He's got a ton to play for. Obviously, that really helps his case this week, besides the fact that he's good. And then a deeper cut here, Matthew. Tyrod Taylor against the Eagles. The old guy's still running a little bit.
At least 20 rushing yards in four of his and all four of his starts. All four of his starts, Tyrod Taylor has at least 20 rushing yards. No team in the NFL gives up more fantasy points to quarterbacks than the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, game script should work in Tyrod Taylor's favor as well. They should be throwing a decent amount. He's my QB 14 this week. And then C.J. Stroud, look, during that stretch, over the last 4 weeks, Colts allowing the fifth highest completion percentage in the NFL. They've given at least 20 fantasy points to Jake Browning and Aiden O'Connell over the last month as well. To your point, not only is C.J. Stroud playing for a playoff spot, but he's also, and I think this is much lower on his list, but it's worth noting, like, I think he, somewhere in the back of his mind, if he balls out of this game, he's offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah.
It's done. Yeah. Like, the only way Puka Nacua wins this award is if C.J. Stroud falters, and obviously he would love to come in and lead the Texans to the playoffs. If they beat the Colts, I believe they're in,
yes,
right?
They're in, no matter what. And then the following day, if the Titans beat, looks like it might be C.J. Beathard, then the Texans would win the division. And if the Jags won that game, then the Texans would get in as a wild card. So it's win and in, lose, go home. With Stroud, the way I'd handicap that market is, I think if Stroud loses in that game and he's not heroic in defeat, I think Puka's going to win that award, just based on everything that I'm hearing. But if Stroud wins, then it's his award.
Yeah, I think that's right. But this is why we liked the other day. I said Puka at plus 450 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year is pretty good odds. Just again, to your point, if you like the Colts, if you think the Colts win this game, because we do believe Puka's going to set the record.
Oh, yeah, I would think so.
The hate list for quarterbacks, it's the quarterbacks that are resting. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy, Matthew Stafford, Joe Flacco, as you see their backups on the right, Tyler Huntley, Sam Darnold, Jeff Driscoll, Blaine Gabbert, and, of course, Carson Wentz. Jeff Driscoll filling in for Joe Flacco, who was nice enough this week to remind us just how old he is. Take a listen.
This is the 16th year that I've been in this league, and you can tell that guys look at you a little bit differently just because of that. I mean, I'm dealing with, I always say it, if I messed up in high school, I mean, I could be these kids' dads, it's like,
Always good for a quote, Joe Flacco.
Yeah, that's good. Congratulations. And like to, also congratulate Joe Flacco. Not only a great season, but apparently all the sex he had in high school. So well done there, Joe. And being smart about it. Also, listen, kids, practice safe sex. Very important there as well. Look, I didn't want to come up with like a legit hate list because it's like, my point is like there's so few quarterbacks that are going to play the whole game. It's just like, what do you want, am I going to hate Jeff Driscoll? Like, no. So this is to, by the way, shout out to PJ Walker and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Like they're like, so, I mean, like.
Well, DCL's on IR.
I understand, but like PJ Walker, like, that's how, like, who knew Jeff Driscoll was on the Browns?
Right, that's when everyone found out.
Right, exactly. Like, wait, that guy's starting? By the way, if you play DFS, Jeff Driscoll is sneaky mobile.
Yes.
He's like that. Like he could put up points.
His Bengals day isn't good at all.
No, anyway. Like he's going to be the bare minimum on DraftKings. And but what I will say here is this again. Yeah, Flacco, Stafford, Purdy, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Those are the guys that are not playing. So if you're playing in a championship and those are one of your starting quarterbacks, you need to look elsewhere. We'll get all into more of this. Who's playing, who's not, who are some sneaky starts tomorrow on the Happy Hour.
And with that, we'll take our first break. When we're back, we're taking a look at Matthew's way too early top 50 right after this. Bragging rights in the AFC East and playoff positioning is on the line when Josh Allen and the Bills travel to South Beach for a battle with Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins. The winner will claim the division crown, and the loser must hit the road in the wild card round of the playoffs. Coverage of the Week 18 matchup begins at 7 p.m. Eastern only on NBC and Peacock. All right, Matthew, it's that time. We're jumping into your way too early rankings for next year so the people can bring home one of those.
Should I name it?
And by people, I mean Jay or I or Pete or Lawrence or Dev or
just
somebody,
make sure you don't make
else.
the same mistakes.
Literally anyone else.
Joe Flacco avoided in high school with that team.
Yes.
Oh, no. Well, I'll be safe. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
Oh, boy. Stephen, please pull up the way too early rankings.
Wait till my wife sees this between us in bed tonight. That's going to be awkward. Or maybe not.
You'll be both sent to the couch.
Not.
Who knows?
You had the
Maybe
trophy.
not.
No one's ever been quickly sent to the couch.
Yeah.
Barry's way too early top 50. Shocker at number 1. Christian McCaffrey, followed by Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Ride or Die, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson. And then it takes us all the way to 9 and 10, Matthew, to get to the next running backs in Breece Hall and Kyron Williams.
My first question to you, Connor Rogers. You shocked to see 2 Jets in the top 10 overall?
A little bit, honestly. I'm very high on Breece going into next year.
He's my number 2 running back, obviously. Just, again, we saw how he ended the season. He'll be another year removed. We expect this offense to take a step up from what it was this year with Aaron Rodgers under center. I expect them to. You should talk about this more than I, but my expectations is that they'll address the offensive line in the offseason.
And they'll sign a backup quarterback,
like a real one. They'll sign a backup quarterback. They'll sign a real one. And so Breece Hall was just looked awesome. And so I think with Rodgers and or a better quarterback than what they had this year and a better offensive line, Breece Hall will be the center point. Again, it's wide receiver heavy. I think as we look at draft trends for next year, and it's way, way too early, but I think it'll be similar to this year, which is I think elite wide receivers will go early, and there's going to be like running backs that you want in the middle rounds. It's worth noting that I did these rankings, and they're way, way too early, and you can see the entire top 50 on NBCSports.com, Rotoworld.com for free. Of course, I'm a company man, but I did them as with sort of a common sense and as the NFL is constructed as of today, right? So again, as of today, Breece Hall has no competition. Dalvin Cook's been released, right? And he's the guy, and we expect Aaron Rodgers to be back. That kind of thing.
Yeah, they haven't traded for a Devonte Adams yet.
Correct.
That could impact Garrett Wilson's targets, things like that.
Exactly, for Garrett Wilson. One of the toughest ones for me was CeeDee Lamb here.
Yeah.
So, he's been nothing short of terrific, but I couldn't rank him ahead of Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Am I crazy on that?
I don't think you're crazy. Look, it's so close. I would probably have Jefferson and Lamb above Chase just because of the amount of just the finish of the season that CeeDee Lamb has had. He's having those peak Jamar Chase games, and with Jefferson, there's a bit more uncertainty at quarterback for him, but if they get Kirk Cousins back, Justin Jefferson, he's Offensive Player of the Year last year. I still think he is the guy.
A lot will change, but what you see here with all the wide receivers in the top 10 are just all these high floor guys.
Yeah.
Right? So Lamb, Jefferson, Chase, Amon-Ra, of course, A.J. Brown comes in at 6 just ahead of him. And, McCaffrey, not only is he number 1, he's number 1 by a clear margin.
Yep. Just feels like Chase has more quiet games than Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. It's just because he's got T. Higgins, who's probably a better complement than the other guys.
Might be on the
move.
move
on.
Yeah,
that's a key thing here.
Yep.
The target share for Chase could be astronomical if they move on
from
from Higgins.
Yeah, if you sort of look at that's one of the things. I do think Higgins, as somebody who I grabbed Andre Isovis or whatever in a number of dynasty leagues,
Princeton legend,
right? Princeton legend. And I know there's a lot of people competing for who's going to replace Higgins in the Bengals lineup, and they may get a free agent or draft somebody. But I definitely do think Higgins is on another team next year.
Okay.
Let's look at 11 through 20, which is very running back heavy in the beginning here. Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Stephon Diggs, Puka Nacua. Hello to the top 15. Puka, the San Francisco stack, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk at 16 and 17. Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen at 18 and 19. And then Saquon Barkley at 20, Barry. He's another guy. Interesting quote from Saquon Barkley this week. He's reiterated throughout his career he hopes to always be a Giant, but he also said something along the lines that a fresh start has crossed his mind at times. So another guy, a fantasy star that could have a new home as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? So the running backs are all here, right? Ended it with Kyron Williams at 10, and then you see Jonathan Taylor, Bijan. I ranked them where I think they should go. But this sort of section makes me nervous. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, you think about Kyren Williams, who had such a magical year, but, smaller guy, and can he,
He did get hurt this year.
He did get hurt this year, and is he kind of a one-hit wonder on Kyren? Jonathan Taylor, 2 of the last 3 years, he's been, massive injuries. Bijan, assuming Arthur Smith is back, makes you nervous a little bit because of just Arthur Smith's nuttiness as well. Love Jahmyr Gibbs as well, but you've always got Montgomery there. So this is a range of running backs that makes me a little nervous, although they're all awesome.
Yeah, well, Jonathan Taylor's an interesting one to me because I think that his ceiling is relatively defined just because Anthony Richardson is going to be the guy next year, and Jonathan Taylor is just going to get James Connered at the goal line, or he's going to get, not quite as dramatically, but DeAndre Swifted at the goal line where, like Kyler Murray, like Jalen Hurts, he's just going to lose a lot of touchdowns to his running quarterback.
I will say this about Gibbs, though. He finishes the year as running back 7. I mean, think about that. Dave Montgomery scored 12 touchdowns this year, and Jahmyr Gibbs was still running back 7.
And Gibbs didn't really become a thing until like week 5 or 6.
Correct.
The first month was really slow.
Yeah,
He's a
Montgomery got hurt there for a while, so that sort of forced Gibbs into a starting role. But still, down the stretch, they've often used Gibbs and not Montgomery when they're getting close.
And on the flip side, what will that offense look like when Ben Johnson takes a head coaching job?
Yeah.
It could be great for Gibbs. It could take a step back.
Yeah,
There's a lot of variables, and that's why doing these so early is tricky.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, going back to this, the one guy that really I struggle with a ranking for is Stephon Diggs. Now, I'm at number 14 overall, but like over the last 6 weeks, he hasn't been a top 50 wide receiver.
Invisible.
Yeah.
He's been invisible, and you're just like, has he hit a wall? Like, he's not old by wide receiver standards, but he's certainly like, I don't know.
Kind of feels like he's going to be on a different team or something.
Something's
It's
just
too,
off.
it's just too
Something's
weird
off.
that he's not playing that much. Yeah, I don't know.
Let's close it out with 21 through 30. Travis Etienne at 21, followed by Cooper Kupp, James Cook, who had a great second half of the season under Joe Brady, Michael Pittman Jr., another guy that could potentially find a new home, but we'll see. Chris Olave at 25, Nico Collins at 26, Devontae Adams at 27, Travis Kelce at 28, Devon Achane at 29, Mike Evans at 30. Travis Kelce at 28, Barry, I feel like that's the lowest you've probably ever had him since he's become a fan.
He's on pace for his fewest receiving yards in a season since 2017. The fact that he did nothing against Cincinnati last week was really an eyebrow raise, right? I mean, like that. The Bengals are so brutal against tight ends. It's championship week, and like I thought Kelce was going to have a monster game, and he didn't. And he looks slower to me.
Yeah.
He looks like he's lost a step. Now, he's never been the fastest guy. He's always been a guy that sort of creates space, finds the holes in the zone, uses that run after the catch ability, uses his physicality, and we expect the Chiefs offense to figure it out this offseason, but still, I'll say this. I don't think the Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year. But on the off chance they did, I could easily see Kelce saying, you know what? It's been a great career. I got 3 Super Bowl rings. I'm going to go be super famous with my girlfriend. Like, you know what I mean? Like, seriously, like, he's got an unbelievable post-playing career lined up for him. He is massively famous. He's charming. He's doing commercials. He could be in broadcasting. He's got a production company. Like, there's all sorts. I don't know how much longer this guy plays, and so he's going to be my number 1 tight end next year, but he's a 3rd rounder for me, and I bet you I have no shares of Travis Kelce next year.
Yep. I think I'm going to end up with a lot of shares of Cooper Kupp just because I think there is a lot of mitigating circumstances for his down games. He's been injured. There have been games where they've just run the ball a ton. He's still had 4 games over 110 yards this season. So I think the Cooper Kupp from a couple years ago is still there, though he will be 31 next year.
I will say the 3rd round is packed. Like,
Yeah.
just looking at some of these names here, just like, I'm actually more excited about the 3rd round than I am the 2nd round, if that makes any sense. But you think about guys like Pittman, Olave taking a step, Nico Collins is now in that tier
Achane.
as well, Achane taking a step up as well. So I just, I think, can't wait to get drafting already. Like, come on, let's get next season here. I got to defend this baby. I got to defend my puppy.
For the full Way Too Early Top 50, make sure to check it out on NBCSports.com. Tonight, be sure not to miss a doubleheader of Big Ten basketball in the Great Lakes State. The action starts when Penn State takes on Michigan State at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, followed by a nightcap of Minnesota at Michigan at 9 p.m. Both matchups can be found exclusively on Peacock.
By the way, if you have any issues with my rankings, please tweet me at CroucherJD and at Connor J. Rogers.
Pick up lines when we're back. Don't forget, on DraftKings Sportsbook this season, new customers can bet $5 and pocket $150 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, all customers can get a no-sweat same-game parlay every day. Download the app and use the promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. I was hoping you guys would join me.
Yeah.
Never let me down. Pick up lines time here at the Happy Hour Bar. Jay, what do you got from Matthew this weekend with a lot of games with not a lot to play for?
Okay, here's what I got for you, Matthew. I got kneecaps, bitten kneecaps. Dan Campbell and the Detroit Fighting Lions, 3.5-point favorites against Minnesota. Now, this line is baking in what you were talking about before. The Detroit, I mean, they still have the 2 seed to play for technically, but they don't really have that to play for because we expect Washington will get done by Dallas. But I think Dan Campbell is going to go all out to win this game. After what happened at the end of the Dallas game, after saying that he is full of controlled fury and pure octane, I think it is part of his brand to go all out to win this game, to knock Minnesota fully out of the playoffs, to enter the playoffs with momentum. I think the market is projecting that he will do the rational thing. I think Dan Campbell is a madman in a good way. Yeah. And I think that's why this team is successful. I think they're going to go all out to win. And if they were playing fully healthy, then this line is substantially higher. And I think that he will win and cover -3.5.
Yeah,
right.
I like that a lot. I also
do
think
too.
the record means something to them, how many wins they get, because the Lions just don't have a lot of years like this in their history.
If they go 12-5 and you're in the mix for a 2 seed, that's one of the greatest seasons ever in Lions history.
Exactly. It looks a lot different. All right, for me, Matthew, I'm going Jets at Patriots under 30.5. You might look at this point total and laugh and say, okay, it's very Iowa Northwestern, gross, 30.5. It has to go over. These two teams, the last 2 times they've met, and this when Zach Wilson and Mac Jones and have been playing, averaged 19 points in those games. 19. They didn't even make it to 20. Yeah. The over-under is at 30.5. New England's run defense has been great for about 6 weeks. Now, I'm not saying great by their standard, great across the league. Yeah. The Jets need to run the ball because Trevor Siemian cannot throw it further than 9 yards. Yeah. There will not be a lot of points in this game.
I like both those. I think I'm going with the under on the. I agree with you. Dan Campbell's a madman, but could I see Greg Joseph kicking a late field goal and covering the 3, something like that? Like whatever. So I like both bets, but yes, Connor, you get to come home with me and this bad boy.
Lovely.
Look at that. Look at that. Oh no, you don't get to touch it. You don't have to get to touch it. You can just look at it. You look at it. That's right. It's me and my girlfriend.
Shameful.
That's absolutely right.
Sure,
I'm gonna make that my profile picture. Look at this beauty.
At least the header.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Unbelievable.
Come on.
I will say these Jets-Patriots games.
Is this good?
No offense to them, they've been some of the worst games I've ever
You
seen.
can see
Yeah.
Connor.
Yeah, the host of the show.
I'm just the trophy. That's it. Back here. You're right, Jay. They're truly miserable.
When I drive it home, I'm going to put a seatbelt around it just to make sure it's,
seat will and in the
alarm
front seat,
will probably
go
off
off
in the front
anyway.
seat I've got airbags, so nothing can happen to this.
You're set. That's
right.
it for us.
Hey, it's closing time. You can't stay here. You got to go home. Goodbye. I'm the champ. Love you.
Goodbye.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.